And here's the thing: if we come out of the game, we talked about our D line, we called to talk about our corners and things. So if we come out of the game with no sacks, but the ball's got to come out so quick, and they can't make any yards passing, and we win the game, Roger, check, love it. Right? If we come out of the game with no interceptions, but the quarterback's getting sacked because he's got nobody to throw to, man, we'll take that. This is the ultimate team sport, and we want to celebrate guys' ability to make plays, and we want all our players to have individual success. But the bottom line is team success.
Jimmy, you and I are the same age. We've known each other a long time now, since college, since we were boys, really. We each started playing football in youth about 50 years ago. And then we each played it for about 10 to 15 years-ish. And then you made a professional career out of football. And quite a long and impressive one, I will add. You're the only guy I knew way back then that did that. I went to a D3 school. None of the guys I played with went to the pros, and I just didn't know a lot of guys that went into coaching. And yes, you made a career of it, and in fact, you did a little more than that. You graduated from Georgetown University in 88?
89.
89, okay. And you'd make 5 stops over the next 5 years in this coaching journey of yours. Your first job, I believe, was at the University of Maryland as a graduate assistant.
That's right.
Then you went to University of Minnesota in the same capacity. Then you went to North Carolina Central, which was a D2 program at the time, and now they're in the MEAC. They're one of the historically black colleges, right?
That's correct.
You were there for a year. Then you went way, way upstate, New York, Hamilton, New York, to coach with Colgate. And that's another FCS team in the Patriot League. Then your 5th year, your 5th stop, was the NFL. And not for a lot of money, as I recall.
Yeah, the zero would be the not a lot.
That's not a lot. And you start working for a guy who might have a little football knowledge and insight, who'd been to a couple Super Bowls.
Run whatever you need to run to get there, because they ain't going to beat us running the ball. Okay.
By the name Belichick. How'd that go?
I tell people I went through 4 years of being at the right place at the wrong time or the wrong place at the right time. And finally, I ended up at the right place at the right time. It wasn't just Bill Belichick. Nick Saban was the defensive coordinator. So 2 of my 3 years in Cleveland was with Nick Saban. So arguably the best coach in the history of college football and the best coach in the history of the NFL were the people that I was learning from. And I was an unpaid intern. I was, filing papers, driving people to the airport, making cigarette runs for secretaries, you name it, breaking. And that's the way Bill worked, is you cross-trained in so many different things. And you had to be, he wanted people that were humble enough to do the little things. And he sort of judged you on how well you did little things, and he wanted to expose you to a lot of things. So I worked in college scouting, I worked in pro scouting, I worked in operations, I worked in coaching. And, I tell people, I did a lot of other things. I got a degree in economics from Georgetown, but I got a PhD in footballology from Bill Belichick University. And to have not just Nick Saban, but Kirk Ferentz
Was your offensive line coach, right?
Right. Pat Hill, Scott O'Brien, some of the best coaches in college and football history were on that staff. And just getting the chance to just sit in the room and not say a word, but just absorb and listen. Incredibly valuable in my career. So Nick Saban took the head job at Michigan State. And again, we're all sort of the low-level, entry-level people. And I was helping him pack his office up because he had taken the job, but we were in a playoff year. So he was sort of splitting his time. He was going to East Lansing for a couple days a week, and then he was coming back and carrying us through the rest of the season. Back then, like everything now was on, you can pack up your office and a thumb drive, put it in your pocket, and turn around and leave. But then everything was in these big playbooks and, these big binders that were metal hinges and, these things were like this thick. And anyway, so Nick had a binder of his game plan notes for every season. Like Nick was really, really meticulous with documentation and sort of the way his process was and how he was thinking about something and the adjustments. And he had, I think it was like maybe he was with the Browns for 5 years, but he was leaving and we were packing all these up and it was like, okay, coach, what do you want to go with you to Michigan State? And he was like, yeah, pack that one, but you can trash that one right there. I think it was the 93 season. And I don't think I've ever told Nick this, but instead of throwing it in the trash and shredding it, I slipped that right into my bookshelf in my office. And I used to sit whenever I had free time and just go through his notes and just knowing teams in the NFL and just sort of looking at the way he went through his week and the adjustments that he made and his thought process behind him. That was incredibly valuable to me as a young coach. And, it was, what better guide to have than the notes of a coaching master. So a lot of stuff, particularly early in my career, I really modeled on Nick's thought process when he was the defensive coordinator with the Cleveland Browns. So I guess, whatever it was from that point, that was 94 when Nick left. 7 years later, I was a coordinator in the NFL. That notebook was on my shelf, and the process that I used was very, very similar to the process that I learned from Nick Saban.
Amazing.
And now it's gone full circle because now maybe the greatest coach in the history of the National Football League is now coaching in college in Belichick.
Carolina. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So it's really amazing how that's gone. But like I said, a lot of years being in the right place at the wrong time or the wrong place at the right time. But, I hit that sweet spot of being in the right place at the right time. And, I think that set me up for the success that I had later on. And it was all the foundation and, learning that I did that. I think, too many times people are very impatient when it comes to whatever career they want to be in. There's a lot of dues that need to be paid. But I was lucky enough to be able to pay those dues to a pretty exclusive club. But, just going back, Chance, I never really thought about making a career of coaching until it was probably early in my senior year at Georgetown. I had a degree in economics, and I was more sort of funneling toward the Wall Street thing and, had a lot of friends that were, working there and, these junior analyst programs where they work 100 hours a week and, those kind of things. And my senior year, one of my old roommates that had graduated the year before had come back for homecoming. And he probably had a few too many beverages that night, but he started like breaking down and he was weeping. And he was talking about how he hated his life and he works 100 hours a week and he has all this money. He doesn't have time to spend it. It's not fulfilling for him. All these different things. And, it was really at that point I was like, you know what, maybe there's a way that I can combine my passion for football and my career. And it was really at that point, because I'd always, like as a kid, I was never I made All-American in Division III in college. That doesn't mean I was a good athlete. I just was a smart player. I worked really hard. I knew the game really well. But I as a kid, I identified a lot more with the coach and the manager of the teams that I followed as opposed to the great players. I think my self-awareness was pretty good back then, but I was always fascinated by the strategy to the game and things like that. So anyway, that's when I sort of started looking in, and at the time Georgetown was in Division III, and I sort of really got lucky because our defensive coordinator at Georgetown knew the secretary at the University of Maryland. So when I sent out my blast of letters back then trying to get a graduate assistant job, she sort of flagged it because she saw the Georgetown thing because she knew Jay Calabrese. And every time the subject of graduate assistants came up, she would always put my resume on the top. And she would always sort of tell the head coach, hey, this guy comes highly recommended. And she was sort of kept putting it up there. And without Linda Kubaney, I don't know if I ever really get a start. Maybe I get frustrated early in my career because I can't, get a graduate assistant job. I can't sort of advance. So there were a lot of little twists and turns along the way. I was really fortunate. And there's a downside to moving 4 times in 4 years in college football, but there's also an upside because I got exposed to so many different coaches and so many different ways of doing things. You mentioned North Carolina Central, probably the most fun I've ever had coaching. I coached the secondary. I had 13 guys. I stay in contact with a lot of them to this day. But it was one of those jobs that you weren't just a coach. You were a academic counselor. You cut the grass. You did laundry.
Wait, what? You were cutting grass?
Oh, yeah. We had to do laundry. We had...
Whose laundry? Just yours or somebody else's?
No, we had to do the team's laundry. The coaches.
You were like the manager too?
Yeah, we did everything. We were the groundskeeper, the manager. I'm sure there's a lot of high school coaches that'll watch this that'll be like, yeah, join the club because they've all done it. But small college football wasn't a whole lot different. When we travel, it was always by bus, and we'd be packing 4 and 5 guys to a room. You'd stop the bus and you'd find like a Golden Corral that was an all-you-can-eat place, and that's where the players would eat. You had to find a lot of different ways to stretch your dollar when it came to those things. But I wouldn't change or trade that experience for the world. That you learn so much about not just the game and coaching, but the human aspect behind it and all the work that goes in. And I think that really gave me an appreciation as my career went on to the equipment managers and the groundskeepers and, things like that. Like, I when I was a head coach in Detroit, every morning I'd go walk the practice fields with our groundskeeper. And he was shocked. He was like, you're the first head coach that's ever done that. But I have respect for what he did. And, same thing with the trainers or the equipment guys or the video guys. We did it all back then. Those things, I didn't make very much money in any of those stops, but every one of them really had a lot to do with, with where I went in my career and the foundation that I built.
Some serious formative dues pay, learning journey. That's a pretty solid coaching background. What do you think? And because there's so much here, we're going to break it now and come back next time. And that's where we really dig deep into college football and how these profound changes that we're seeing today can affect somebody like Coach Jimmy Schwartz in the NFL, a guy right in the thick of it all, and a guy who's had a pretty broad view of things for about 50 years now. So be sure to join us for part 2 with veteran NFL coach Jimmy Schwartz. Dankjewel, mensen. Thank you for joining us. History is cool.